set up this space. I rented out a dungeon here in LA, and we put Matt at the beginning of the ceremony just to kind of like have the candles, have some incense to take in the space. I had this music that I like to use that's very tribal. You could pick whatever you like that speaks to you. And we were able to create, like, before there was anything sexual, we were able to just create this literal triangle between the three of us.
This podcast contains explicit adult content, mature themes, and candid conversations about sex, dominance, power exchange, and ethical non-monogamy. It is intended for audiences 18 and over only. Listener discretion is advised. The views expressed by our guests are theirs alone and do not necessarily reflect the views or values of the hosts, producers, or affiliated brands. The Bull Brotherhood Podcast is for educational, entertainment, and empowerment purposes only. Nothing in this podcast should be interpreted as legal advice, medical guidance, or psychological counseling. We speak from experience, not credentials. Always practice consent, respect the boundaries of others, and follow local laws. If you're not comfortable with frank talk about sex, kink, dominance, or emotional power, this probably isn't the show for you. But if you're ready to step into your masculine edge and embrace a lifestyle that demands mastery, welcome to the Brotherhood.
Welcome to the Bull Brotherhood Podcast, where we talk power, pleasure, and the art of dominance in ethical non-monogamy. This is not your average lifestyle podcast. This is for men who lead, men who master, and men who leave a lasting impression. If you're here, you're not just curious. You're ready to elevate. So to all the bulls, hot wives, stags, and open-minded explorers, we see you. Let's go.
Oh yeah, claim the mind, train the body, on the soul, deep connections built on trust. Let's all go from
Ladies and gentlemen, good evening. Welcome to another invigorating episode of the Bull Brotherhood Podcast. I'm the man with the plan, Brian Morgan, aka the Sigma male himself, 1/3 of the podcast team, along with the beautiful couple and family, the lovely Siren. What's going on, sweetie?
Hey.
All right. And of course, the nephew himself, Socrates. What's good?
What's good, y'all? What's good?
All right now. And ladies and gentlemen, again, we have a very, very special guest coming at you from the great state of California. We know him as the sapiosexual one himself. Ladies and gentlemen, please give a big round of applause and a hand for Pagan. What's going on, brother?
What's going on, my people? It's good to be back with you.
All right. It's definitely a pleasure for you to be back. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight, Pagan is kind of going to take the lead on a topic that he has mastered over the years, and one that I'm very, very curious about. If I'm not mistaken, Pagan, is called what's again?
Sex magic, which sometimes is spelled MAGICK. Yeah, sex magic.
That shit sounds sexy as fuck, doesn't it? Again, Pagan is going to take the lead tonight, and I'm going to pass the mic on to him. Once again, coming at you from California, the man himself, Pagan.
Yeah, so I appreciate you guys having me on to talk about this. This is a subject that I have. I would not say that I am a master in this. I am trying to get mastery in this. This is one of those things, like many of the aspects of what you guys talk about and being a bull, where you can be like Socrates, the eternal student. But I have learned quite a few things that I'll share with people who are interested in kind of a one-on-one, and try to explain it a little bit from my point of view. One thing I will say at the top, we say all the time in the lifestyle, there's no one way to do things. This is the ultimate example of that to me. When it comes to sex magic, if anybody is telling you there's a way, stay away from that person. They don't know what they're talking about. It is very much dependent on the participants, what they are interested in, the power that they harness, what is specific about the practitioner. So I just want to stress that. You're going to hear me talk about a lot of different things, some of which is going to be specific to the way I approach it. But please do not take that as the way to do it. It is a way to do it, and it might give you ideas on how you would like to do it. So I'll just say that up front. But in terms of just talking about what it is in the beginning, I wanted to just start off and talk about skepticism first, about magic in general. Sex magic, magic. It's 2025. You throw out the word magic, and some people are like, what are you talking about? Like, is this Harry Potter? What is going on here? I started off a skeptic. So I wanted to start there just for those in the audience that might be skeptics. I'm with you. I'm an empiricist. I'm a rationalist. I'm a fan of what I can feel, taste, and touch. And if that's not possible, I'll take what's observable and provable. But that's kind of where I came from. So I just wanted to put that out there up front. If there's is a thing that sounds woo-woo to you and sounds a little out there, I'm with you. And I'll tell you about my journey and how I've come to respect it and understand the power of it where I didn't at first. But I just wanted to let you know I'm a kindred soul if you're skeptical. But much like I imagine someone who's, had a paranormal encounter, for instance, I've met people that I haven't seen a ghost before, but I've met people who have had encounters and you can't tell them otherwise, or people that have seen an unidentifiable object in the sky that's, doing stuff that a plane can't do. I've talked to people who have had these experiences, even though I haven't had them, and they have seen and felt and experienced things. So I am more open-minded than I used to be about a lot of things that I used to scoff at or laugh at, even though it may not be something I've experienced. I do have more respect for it. And I'm going to be telling you about my journey to get to that point with sex magic. So here's what I propose. If you listen and you agree with at least most of what I'm going to say right now, maybe if you're a skeptic, you can see a way to entertain what I'm saying about my experience. And what I am proposing that I think most people agree with is the idea that your perception is your reality. What we see, what we perceive, what we think is real is real. We've all seen The Matrix. Morpheus gave us the speech. That is the truth. Objective reality is something that is questionable at best. More likely it's what you perceive reality to be. And if perception is reality and focusing intention changes your perception, which is something I think we can also agree on, then I think that focusing your intention, changing your perceptions can change your reality. And that's what I have experienced when it comes to sex magic. So, you want to become a better pianist, you practice, intensity, imagination, emotional conviction can make you, somebody who's at Juilliard. Or if you visualize yourself nailing a presentation or that CrossFit competition or whatever, your physical body calibrates to make that a real thing. We've all experienced that in real life. People don't tend to question those things. I'm saying the exact same thing when I'm talking about sex magic. So you can pray, you can affirm affirmations, you can manifest, you can visualize, you can obsess over things, you can just grind, do the work. You can daydream, you can journal, you can scream into your pillow. But all of this is the same thing. You are aiming your energy with intention, and then reality bends to your will. And sometimes that's very subtle. Sometimes I've experienced things that are wild. And just one more thing, just to get into like the actual reality of what like sex magic can do, that's based in what we know about science. Like, we are all familiar with like the chemicals that the body releases around sex. These are real tangible things that change in your body. Like dopamine, they call that the pleasure molecule, but it's also the focus and reward molecule. It's been called that. It enhances your motivation. It sharpens your attention. It strengthens your synaptic potential, which is just a fancy way of saying it makes your neurons fire together and wire together. That chemical is released when you're aroused, and especially when you're having orgasm. So High dopamine means you're in a high learning state. Your brain plasticity actually expands. Same thing with oxytocin. When you have a sexual touch or an orgasm, it increases trust, your emotional salience. It consolidates your memory and pattern recognition. What you learn and experience when that chemical is going on during sex, your brain actually has new wiring and takes that in differently than if you were just sitting in a chair. So once again, your brain is going to flag what's important when these chemicals are being released, and it recodes your brain. And the list goes on. There's, endorphins and, the noradrenaline and serotonin, all of these things around orgasms, around sex, they lay down like new mental pathways. So I'm saying all that to say, when you're turned on, when you're having sex, when you're having an orgasm, your brain is paying more attention and encoding literally new ley lines. It trains your nervous system to experience reality differently. We've all felt goosebumps. We've all felt like a chill that's pleasurable when someone whispers in our ear. These are all things that are chemically your body's reacting. And I'm saying sex magic can do all those things that you've experienced and amplify them by 1,000 times. So that's just kind of like the background of, like, for the skeptics out there, where this is rooted in science and what you can do that we all really don't question. But then the sex magic is taking that thing to another level. So when I say sex magic, based on all of what I just talked about, the definition of it for me is intentional harnessing of, like, the peak neurochemical states that I just talked about that encode your behaviors and your perceptions. So you're like primed with belief, intention, visualization. On top of that, you're able to achieve new heights with sex and other things. So, while your body's in that state, if you use sex magic ritual, sex magic symbolisms, suggestions, you can rewrite your circuitry. And why not? Why not focus that? Why not hone it, harness it, and shape your sexual reality? So long story short, I'm talking about neuroplasticity as spell casting. You're able to actually physically change your experience and the experience of others. If you focus your intention and will, you can create a new reality.
Pagan, can I jump in here?
Yeah, I was just shutting up.
So can we take a few steps back? It sounds like you're combining, let's say, for people who are not like into the woo-woo stuff or has heard it the old school way, it was called the law of attraction. Now most people call it manifestation. A lot of other people call it different things. You're also combining the chemical and neurological responses to orgasms with the process of how we process reality, right? But can you break a few of those things down? Or I don't care. But for our audience to kind of catch them up, because you gave a beautiful, beautiful explanation of what it is. But I'm going to say this. I was sitting there listening to you and I was like, I understood everything he's saying. But the only reason why is because I probably read 15 books on all of those subjects. So
right.
I'm like, can we break it down a little bit more for layman's terms for those who are not familiar with a lot of these things and nuances that me and you, I know, are very familiar with?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned a bunch of the specific chemicals and biological functions. But if you take all of those specifics away and you don't want to focus on it, you can look them up later. Your intention and your will, we all know, as you pointed out, manifestation, saying your mantra, meditating, in the morning, you go into the mirror and you create a reality for your day coming up by talking to yourself, and you practice this ability to have your will and intention become something, or your vision board or whatever. What I'm saying is, we're not unfamiliar with the idea that your will can create things in your life. And we're not unfamiliar with people who are sitting around on their ass covered in Cheeto dust. A lot of stuff doesn't happen for them. because they're not putting the will out there they want.
I resemble that
I'm
comment.
sorry.
I
No,
love
no
Cheeto.
shade.
I love Cheeto Puffs. They're like my favorite. You know, when I've had a little 420 time, I love those Cheeto Puffs. I had no idea that was going
We
to be
all love
where I broke
Cheetos.
into the conversation, but you know.
Yeah, that's what Siren was like offended. Like, all right, you gone too far.
We
No,
gotta don't be
no,
talking about my
and
Cheetos like that.
Cheetos are great. What's not great is sitting around not doing nothing while you're eating them. And Siren, you're a go-getter who has got a million different things going on, so you deserve your Cheetos.
Thank you.
But the idea that you can just sit there and things are going to come to you because you're thinking about them, I personally don't think that's a thing.
Right.
I'm very skeptical about that. So that's not what manifestation is. Manifestation is using your will to put things out there. And yes, there's a mental component and belief, but you also have to like physically do things. And I think that's what sex magic, Socrates, kind of marries the two things. We all know there's a physical component to sex. That's what most people know. That's the very basic thing, is the physical aspect of sex.
Right.
What I'm talking about is that power that you feel, is there more there? What if you and your partner focus intention together, or if you're by yourself, by the way, because you don't even have to practice sex magic with someone, but I'm going to be focused more on what you can do with two people or more. If you are able to focus with someone else and their intention, and you go into this sexual act that would normally be something that is much more just physical, and you elevate it to a mental and a spiritual, a soul level, if you will, you're able to harness energy that was before that untapped. So that's kind of what I'm getting at, Socrates, is all the chemicals and stuff that we talked about explain why it happens. But what we're talking about is creating reality based on focusing yourself and changing what was normally not there, where there was nothing. Now there is something by the sheer force of will. And I'll give you one example of this. You can have a tree in the woods. It's just a fucking tree. Now, you take that same tree and a bunch of Wiccan chicks go out there in the woods and they strip naked and they start dancing around it, carving runes into it that mean something to them. And they're chanting a song that's ancient, that means something to them on the solstice when the earth is changing and giving birth and the moon is in the sky, literally pulling our oceans and tides because it's so powerful. And they believe and have intention as they dance around that tree and practice their spell casting. I dare say that tree is no longer just a fucking tree. It was before, but the power of will and what those women are doing around it creates something new. And you can be skeptical all you want, but if you've ever been around something like this, you tend to see that there is something there. So that's kind of what I'm talking about.
I love it. I love it. And for our audience, since Pagan, you're coming from the skeptic's perspective, I want to share a book that I think people should look into. If you're a skeptic and you're interested in like these things from a scientific perspective or an evidence-based perspective, there's a really great book called The Source by Dr. Tara Swart. And she's an MD, PhD, and she just gives really practical and scientific-based examples of how this stuff really works. So then when Pagan starts getting into some of the practices, you can go as far as me and Siren do, because we are firm believers in not only God, but the law of attraction and manifestation, and that these are abilities to create for us. You don't have to go that far if you're not a believer. You can just rely strictly on empirical data and the science. Either way, you're going to get there.
I agree. Yeah. And then, if you'd like, we can talk a little bit about like some of the ways that you can enter into sex magic, some of the avenues and channels through which people do it. And then I could talk personally about like some of the things that I've experienced and what I've used that have been powerful for me. one of the things is there's a cocktail of things you can use, but one of them is like the Jungian archetypes. A lot of people use them. So you're integrating this unconscious mythological basement that, Carl Jung talked about that's inside of all of us. There's the shadow, the anima, and the animus. And they have these archetypes, the hero, the mother, the crone, these symbolic things that he theorized are in all of us. And is the reason why, for instance, like myths, whether it be, an ancient Greek myth or an African fable or Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, they're all myths. And there's a reason why around the world people can listen to these stories and get engrossed in them. These are all because they're based in these Jungian archetypes. That's one way that people go into these sex magic ceremonies. If you embody the warrior and you're making love to a woman who is in her divine feminine, or you want to face your shadow side, your trauma, and get power where you had your power taken away from you. These are all things you can do through the Jungian archetypes in sex magic. And I have found those to be extremely powerful because the arousal in all those chemicals we talked about, it changes from just an abstract concept into something visceral, something real. You are the warrior. She is the inner divine feminine. And then your body reprograms itself because of what I talked about earlier. And then when you go into situations later, you can access the divine feminine because your body, your neural pathways are like, oh no, I got this. I know I'm divine feminine because the other day in that sex magic thing, I was starting to rewire myself to be that. So I'm with you. And now you can take that stuff out into the real world in ways that you just couldn't before because you have changed your reality. Another way are chakras. This is more the tantric energy centers, but they cross-pollinate with the Jungian things that I was talking about. These same chakras have an archetype correspondent. So for instance, like the one that people think of the most with sex is the sacral chakra, the pelvis, the genitals, that's desire, emotion, pleasure. But that is also a Jungian archetype. That's the lover, or the shadow version of that is the prostitute, which by the way is not bad, by the way. I want to point out, because we grow up in a Judeo-Christian society here in the West, the shadow is looked at as evil, bad, stay away from it. And these archetypes, shadow is not bad at all. It's just the other side of you. I think Jung famously said, if I don't cast a shadow, then how am I whole? It just means that you're a human that has another side. So I just want to be clear. But all of these things with the chakras, you can also tap into your heart, your throat, your third eye. These are all linked to these things too, and you can cross-pollinate them and use them in sex magic. Again, whatever speaks to you is what you can tap into. And as for myself personally, I've tapped into two things usually. I'm always adapting to my partner. I don't particularly practice sex magic on my own by myself usually, so I'm not as adept to speak on that, but that is definitely something that you can do on your own and manifest things. But I do like the amplification of bouncing off of a partner, and I just feel better when I'm not bringing everything to the table and when I'm waiting to meet someone and seeing what they bring. And then I'm able to go, okay, now I know that I am the yin to that yang. I know how to fit in and fill in the gaps to that particular person. It's not a cookie cutter thing that I'm just doing every time. And so for me, because of the way I play, the kind of partners I have, and our areas of interest, interracial is one of the things that I use to tap into. The magnetic attraction between black and white, between the polar opposites, the yin yang symbol that's ancient, that literally is usually black and white, where one ends, the other fills in. Those are things that I have tapped into because it just works for me and my partners. But also another thing that I've tapped into is what is called sacred geometry, particularly the triangle, because again, this is just for me. I'm often interacting with couples. So I'm entering something where there's already 2 points. I become a third point, and that triangle can have power. There's a reason why you see triangles all through nature. Every snowflake, if you zoom in on it, is made of them. Every pyramid that was built that way for a reason. And I like to build off of that triangle of the 3 people. So that's a couple of the things that I personally have done. So I'll shut up and let you guys, chat. But those are some of the things in terms of physically how you can go about entering into sex magic, if any of those things, speak to you. And there's others.
So, Pagan, tell us a little story about how you got into this. Like what was the experience that you had, or experiences, or community, or whatever that led you here from skeptic to on a podcast teaching us about it?
Yeah, so I can tell you exactly when that, no pun intended, that seminal moment happened. I was with a woman. We were playing. She's very witchy, and at a certain point, she started speaking in a different language, and I was shook, as you can imagine. Like, it just popped out of her, and I didn't recognize the language. So I immediately stopped, as anyone would, and I laugh at myself now, but at the time, I could only go on what I know. And I thought she was having a neurological episode. Like a person can have a stroke and they can't speak words, or it comes out mumbo jumbo. That's what it sounded like to me, like something I don't recognize. So I stopped and I'm like, "Are you okay?" And she immediately snapped back and was like, no, I'm fine. That happens. Just keep going. So we continued playing. She continued speaking in this language. And then after we're done, as you can imagine, I was like, "So what the fuck was that?" And she had to break down to me like, "Well, that happens sometimes. I can go into this thing called light language, where I speak light language." And you may have also heard this as speaking in tongues. It's pretty much the same thing. I'm skeptical about a lot of things until, I get some more proof. And I was particularly skeptical about speaking in tongues because, as a person who likes evidence, I'm like, okay, you might be speaking in tongues, but it's interesting when I see somebody in a tent in Georgia handling snakes and they're speaking in tongues. I'm like, it's interesting. I can't check on this. Like, it's not based in Latin. It's not based in Greek, nothing. So I just have to take your word for it that this language is a language, because it sounds to me like you might just be mumbling stuff. That was the place I was coming from when it came to that, to be honest. But then I'm in front of this woman and she's not trying to sell me anything. I didn't pay her a fucking nickel at a carnival to fucking do a trick. There's no reason for her to try to freak me out and do this. This was real. She went into another state and was speaking something ancient through sex. And I had never experienced that before. But she told me when she's with certain people, and this is early on for me, certain people who are receptive can be a conduit for her, and then it allows her to go into that state. If she's with a partner who is not receptive, it never comes out. There's a part of her that knows when to lay her gifts before an altar and when to keep them to herself. So as much as I was a skeptic, apparently I was open-minded. Apparently there was something about me where her somatic nervous system, her spiritual side, her witchiness felt comfortable. So that was my first experience, Socrates, with, I don't know what this is, but it's powerful and it feels real, even though a minute ago, if you asked me, I would have probably laughed at it. And then I started taking this stuff way more seriously and came to find out, for instance, that the language she was speaking at that time, she couldn't translate it afterwards. She couldn't tell me, oh, this is what I was saying. I was saying that. She was like, all I can tell you is when I'm saying it, it's not me, it's just me speaking. But then when we're done with the actual act of sex and it goes away, she couldn't tap back into it. But I have since learned she can do that now. She can remember what she was saying and translate it now, because she's had some years where she's gone into this more. And I'm saying all that to say this woman had what I call witchy antlers. She has antenna that pick up things that frankly I don't pick up or didn't pick up at that time, and I'm starting to pick up more because my antlers are growing, my antennas are growing more. And so I'm picking up wavelengths and I'm doing things. I did an ayahuasca journey recently, and I was speaking light language out of the fucking blue and surprised myself. I did not see it coming. I don't even know what the language was. This is my first time, but something channeled through me and it happened to me. So I've gone again from, being skeptical of this stuff to actually doing it myself and feeling it in reality.
You were hit by the spirit in the South, South, in the biblical, in the Bible, and in church. You will hear preachers preach, and all of a sudden they start speaking in tongue because the Holy Spirit has gotten inside of them. I guess that's the same thing as involving sex magic. There's some people, some ladies, some men, where that spirit, that sexual spirit gets inside of you and you start speaking in tongue. And now you hear again, you are becoming a master because you understanding now exactly what you're saying. At first you didn't know what it was. You just thought you were just mumbling, but no, you were not mumbling. You have now mastered understanding the spirit hitting your body. So that's a beautiful thing right there. That's beautiful.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. That's a really good way to explain it to a lot of people. Have been in a black church, Baptist churches. They catch the Holy Ghost, right?
Exactly.
That is something, and I'm just being honest about myself. I didn't grow up in that kind of church. I grew up in a church, but it wasn't that kind of church, and I always side-eyed that. Like, okay, that seems like a bit much. Maybe you just like the music.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
I've learned now how little I know. And there are metaphysical qualities to the way our bodies and the whole universe works that we don't fully understand. And I have to say that I look at it a lot like radio waves. Radio waves have existed since the literal Big Bang. So they're billions of years old. It wasn't until the early 1900s that we started saying, oh, I can put talk radio on that signal. I can put music on that signal, and I can send it all around the planet on FM and AM. The waves were just sitting there all that time through the birth of humanity, through all those billions of years. And for us to say that, oh, well, they exist now because we found them would be ridiculous. They were always there. The question is, did you have an antenna to pick it up? Did you know how to harness that power? Because the power is just sitting there waiting for you. I look at this like that. The power is just sitting there, waiting for you to believe in it and to figure out how to harness it and to get your antenna right. And once it starts coming through, you're going to hear that sex magic music. That's how I look at it.
What does it sound like?
It sounds like whatever you want to make it, Siren. Like, that's the beautiful thing about it. Like, for me, it sounds like some of the things that I brought out, because those are the things that I'm interested in. And frankly, those are the things that have power to me. So I'm able to create with them. But for you, it could be something completely different. It could be your divine feminine. It could be the goddess in you that you feel your partner worshiping, and you realize, oh, I'm not just queen energy, I'm goddess energy. I can turn a man into my altar, and like a succubus, you will transform not only yourself, but him, and he will be like, what the fuck did you just do to me, Siren? And it will all be what I would call sex magic because of the power of what you believe, or if you're lucky, the two of you are believing together and creating together. And then once you experience it, you can't go back. You can't unbelieve it. You can't choose what you believe. You just believe things or you don't. So, the music is different for everybody.
Do you think there's some people out there too that are already practicing it to some degree, but they just don't know what it was like?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what that woman was telling me the first time, is you're adept to this. You have a propensity toward it if you get out of your own way with all of your doubt and your skepticism and, frankly, my ignorance of side-eyeing and kind of giggling at it.
If you free your mind.
Which, by the way, if you free your mind. Exactly. Like I said, we're back to Morpheus, or In Vogue, if you're a fan. But I think that's an important aspect to this, because I'm going to be straight up with you. I'm not going to speak for other people, but I guarantee you I'm going to be speaking for other people when I say this. I was raised Christian and Black in America. There's a bunch of walls right there in that statement to stay away from sex magic. Culturally, there's a lot of times when Black people see that and they go, oh, that ain't right, because Jesus, frankly, because Christianity. They were taught anything that says something like sex magic, that must mean an antithesis of what I was raised in. And that means it's wrong. And that's the devil. That's the darkness. Shadow sex magic especially. That's got to be evil. I'm staying away from that. I'm not going to that haunted house. There's a lot of things about my upbringing that caused me to push this away, to laugh at it, to diminish it, and to not give it the credence it deserved. And also just my scientific mind, the fact that I am an empiricist, the fact that I am interested in what can you prove. That had an entire blind spot for me where I was not looking at this because it isn't provable in a certain way. But I had to change my metrics by what is real. Because again, I was looking for objective reality when I should have been looking for what can be a subjective reality that I can create.
Pagan, let's talk about you affecting other people, because this is all making sense to me when I'm saying, like, okay, well, just for everybody, just for the audience to know, I've had an experience with this, right? Actually, before I met Siren, I dated a hoodoo priestess who was part of an order and everything. And she's pretty much a witch, but from hoodoo is the original African version of these beliefs. And she taught me about sex magic, and she gave me really simple things like just saying affirmations and visualizing. So during orgasms and things like that's, I know that's just the beginning of it.
I thought she only taught you to say roll tide.
See, now he's from Alabama. That's a true story.
Oh, I had to poke that in there. I had to poke that in there.
Well, it's a true story.
Because he told me when I met, he's like, just don't ever say roll tide when you're coming. So, of course, I had to do it at least once.
I love how Siren trolls you while she's fucking you. That's amazing. That's true love right there.
I do. I like to laugh during play. You're over here bringing people to the depths of ecstasy, and I'm over there like this. Oh, I got to tell you guys this interjection. It's the opposite of sex magic. This guy, I was telling him, like, hey, you need to kind of like slow down. I'd like you to slow down with things. And he said, well, if I slow down, he's fairly new to the lifestyle. He said, I feel like I'm making love to you, and I only want to make love to my girlfriend. And I said, we don't make love, buddy. We're making friendship juice. And I said, and I don't make love to anyone but my husband because I'm too busy making jokes. And he said, you got that right. So he always tells me I'm a black woman trapped in a white woman's body. Pretty funny. Anyways, opposite of sex magic. That was free. Yeah. All that was free. I had to lighten things up. Ooh, my brain was starting to contract and expand. Hey, it's a lot for Siren.
Deep. But that's what this podcast is about.
Yeah,
we are talking about bulls and everybody else in the lifestyle from our perspective. And we're talking to high-level operators, like Mr. Mocha says. And so this is how deep high-level operators go. Pagan's not going to call himself that, but that's what I'm calling him.
Right.
So let's talk about how it affects other people. I get how it could affect me, but explain, especially from a scientific perspective and from the magic perspective, how that's affecting my play partner.
Yeah, well, I mean, there's a couple of things. Like, what's interesting to me is I started looking into this and learning more about it. Even between people, like what you're talking about, like how do I affect the person next to me? There's been like studies that they've done where people who meditate or chant or just breathe in sync with each other, their brain waves start to synchronize with each other. The theta and alpha, I believe, specifically, they go into sync with each other just by being near someone who's meditating, chanting, and breathing like you. Also, your heart rhythms, your EEG patterns, they can start to align. There's been studies on this. That is something that we don't even fully understand why that happens. But there's a resonant field between people, and it's measurable.
So I'm going to step in.
You can look it up.
I'm going to step in and be nerd and get. So Siren she's a professional nerdy petty. So all of that you said, we have an exercise. We don't chant, but we do pray together. I make her put her hand on my heart to connect with my heartbeat. And then we take 3 heavy coordinated breaths together. And all of that has been scientifically proven, as Pagan says, to align not only your thought patterns, but your heart rhythms, and just creates this insane connection and vibration. And eventually, we've just started realizing this, and we've been doing this for about, 2 years now, Mommy?
Yeah.
Yeah. We are really starting to think, I will call her and be like, hey, I was thinking this. She was like, you know what? I was just thinking that. And then she'll do it to me. She'll call me, and I was like, I was just concerned about that, or I was just worried about that, or I was just going to call you about that. And it's real, y'all. We do it. It's real.
Yeah, we did it since we moved in together. We started it pretty quickly.
Yeah.
We should probably do it at night too before bed.
Yeah, probably should. That would be dope.
Yeah.
And sometimes if I'm just feeling anxious, he'll pull me close and we'll do the same thing.
Yep.
It's just like a decompression exercise at any time of the day if I'm feeling anxious.
Yeah. I'll say 2 things about that. Let's say I was skeptical about that, which I'm not, but let's just say I was. It's real to you guys. It works. So let's say that I was like, oh, I don't know about the science behind this. I'm skeptical. The placebo pill that makes me not feel sick, to me, I don't give a fuck if it's a placebo pill. I'm better.
Right.
If I feel better, I am better. Now, I understand what you guys just said as actually being rooted in the science that I've learned. So I do believe it scientifically, but even if I didn't, I would be like, that is you guys creating a reality between the two of you, is what you just described. Now, on top of what Socrates, what you're saying, like, there was a study in 2010, I think it's called the energetic heart, and electromagnetic fields from our hearts, they found out they extend like 3 to 10 feet from your body. That's a real thing.
And that's
what
what
you were just talking about with the heart thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, that is the day I believed in the law of attraction. Because if anybody has seen The Secret, that's like the biggest thing that they talk about, the manifestation of the law of attraction. It gives you this impression, and people have claimed that your energy can go out all the way to the ends of the earth. And I'm like, it doesn't have to. You do, and because I saw that study, you vibrate at certain frequencies. That frequency has a signature. Other human beings, their heart and EKG are picking that up. That frequency can be carried. If you are manifesting something and it needs to get to China, just by you being in that vibration around just the people you're around, it'll get there. So it doesn't have to travel hundreds of thousands of miles. It only has to travel 3 to 5 feet. You just got to be in proximity of other people, and you got to be vibrating the thing that you want. You have to have the frequency of ecstasy, or the frequency of seduction, or the frequency of confidence. And how you vibrate the frequency is you act that way, you talk that way, you think that way, you practice in your mind, in your eyes. You just be it by acting and thinking and practicing. And so here's the thing. There was a TikTok I saw, I loved it. I'm going to butcher it, but I'm going to try to do it the best. It says, Christians call it faith. Witches call it spells. Scientists call it placebo. Mysticists call it the law of attraction. But they all agree.
Absolutely. That's a really good way to put it. No matter what avenue that you chose out of all those things you just said, they're all arriving at the same place. And that's where I've arrived, you know. And yeah, I think that what you're talking about, you know, you asked like how can I influence someone else? Just by being open and receptive, I'm influencing. But I'm also, because I've done this a few times, I'm able to communicate with a partner or partners, with a couple, with a single person, and I'm able to like tap into what resonates with me and them and start building the foundation stones of that pyramid, or, you know, whatever that temple is that we're building in that space that we're in. And that to me is the real joy of it, is I'm offering something to them, but they are offering something back to me. I am just half of a yin yang symbol floating out there in the nothingness until I get my other half. And, or, you know, my other third in the case, 2/3 in the case of like the triangle with a couple. But what we create together is far greater than anything I could have created on my own. There's no way that I could do it. So I had a ceremony I did once with a couple that's close to me, and I had my cuckler, my cuck butler. He set up this space. I rented out a dungeon here in LA, and we put Matt at the beginning of the ceremony just to kind of like have the candles, have some incense, to take in the space. I had this music that I like to use that's very tribal. You could pick whatever you like that speaks to you. And we were able to create, like, before there was anything sexual, we were able to just create this literal triangle between the three of us. And then as it went on, we amplified it more and more. And that evening ended with her, the wife, completely naked, covered in runes that I painted on her with my fingers, and symbols that energized the fuck out of her. And she didn't even necessarily know what every symbol meant, but she felt it. And that night was transformative for all of us. And I didn't fully know exactly what I was doing at that time. I was doing baby steps, but that leap forward with the intention when I was in sync with that couple, that was another step forward where I was like, this is a real thing and I want to learn more about it, because I'm able to bring things to other people as well as myself. So that's another example, Socrates, of like how I'm able to influence them, but I want to stress their influence me back.
Well, I'm very fascinated with this, but you know what? We are coming up on time. So one, I would love to you to just maybe kind of give us a closing statement on what you feel about it, and, you know, where people can get more information about it. And then I'd love for you to come back and give us a part 2, man, because there's so many other things I want to dive into with this.
It would also be cool if there was some sort of kind of like beginner, you know, 3-step process or something to kind of just introducing yourself that was super simple for people like me, that this was like, wow, that sounds fascinating, but I couldn't absorb all of it, right? So just something a little more simplistic that we can put in the show notes even. You could list it now, or you could send it to us and we could put it in the show notes. Then that would just, I think, would be helpful too. But we really appreciate you being on tonight.
Absolutely. In fact, that might be something better for me to like send you to put in the show notes.
Absolutely.
So since we're up on the hour now, but absolutely. And these are things that you know, what's great is it's readily available, Siren, for people. If you look up sex magic, for instance, on YouTube, there's going to be a ton of information from people. You could pick whatever style you like, whatever person you like, and they're going to give you a lot of those tools that you can start out with. What I would just say really quickly, though, is creating an intention around something, because what we haven't talked about is the fact that sex magic can be used for anything. I personally use it for sexual things, but people use sex magic for everything that they want to give intention to and to manifest, from career goals to health to money. They're harnessing the power of sex for that. That's not my wheelhouse. I use it kind of for sexual amplification. I'm not trying to like figure out my financial gain through it, but that is a thing. So
Yeah.
whatever your intention is,
That's what I
focusing
practiced.
on that. Yeah. So whatever your intention is, focusing on that, choosing a partner who is receptive. I don't want to give any rules, as you can tell, but I would dare say choosing someone who you align with, who is on the same page as you, who resonates with you, as opposed to just a one-night stand, is obviously going to give you better results.
Right. Because you're going to
And
have that flow of energy
that,
back and forth, circular.
absolutely. So, yeah, absolutely. So intention, partner, or no partner, by the way. I want to stress, you do not have a partner for this. But I have found that obviously amplifies it. And then choosing your pathway. I talked about some of the avenues from interracial, the power of that, through the triangles. It could be, certain sigils. It could be things from, your ancestral past. If you are of African ancestry, if you're, from Ireland, there might be a Celtic thing that speaks to you. It could be a family thing, whatever that is. Totems. I was at an event the other day, a couple weeks ago, and I was having a really amazing session with a wife, and the husband was kind of over in the cuck chair. And I looked down, and he had a talisman in his hand that he had gotten when they were traveling in another country. And it was like a little fetish idol with the big breast and the big hips and everything, that we've seen in like all those ancient cultures have. And he was over there like holding it and stroking it while he was watching his wife get fucked. And I didn't even know he had that. I didn't know that they were like that about this, but I was like, oh, we're going to go places with this couple because we're all on the same page. So there's these things that you can have, even if it's a totem or something that's powerful to you, and just focusing your intention. And while you're having sex, harnessing your energy and then focusing on that thing that you want, whatever that want is. That's the very basic thing I'll say to answer you, Siren. And that can actually just be my closing thing, Socrates, is just my only thing I would say is, as much as you can, if there's anything that's getting in your way of saying that this isn't something for you, that's fine for something not to be something for you. But take a moment to question why. Why are you skeptical about it? Why don't you believe it? What I found for me personally is the reasons why weren't good enough. It was my programming. It was a lot of things that I don't even necessarily agree with anymore, bleeding over into this and making me go, yeah, I don't know about that. Once I let go of that, a whole gateway, and I mean literally a gateway to another universe, has opened up for me. So I wish that for everyone within the sound of our voices, if they're able to come into something that's going to open just an abundance of riches, sexually and otherwise, maybe give this a try and find whatever avenue works for you and just build on it. And I guarantee you're going to find a beautiful new arena that you never saw before, because your antennae are going to start to grow and you're going to start picking up those sex magic frequencies.
I love it.
Dope. Take it away.
Good deal, man. Learned a lot tonight. I really did. Sex magic is something that I might have to dive into in the very near future. Again, ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Pagan. And he has really taught me a lot tonight. And I hope he comes back for part 2 of the topic of sex magic. For Socrates, Siren, myself, as well as Pagan, until we meet again, ladies and gentlemen, as usual, from the Bull Brotherhood to all the brothers out there, I bid you guys good night. To all my hot wives and sexy singles, ladies out there, good morning. I'm the Sigma male, Brian Morgan. Until we meet again, auf Wiedersehen, cheers, bye-bye, good night.